Brownfields are properties, developments, reuses, or expansions that may be complicated by the presence of hazardous substances, pollutants, or contaminants. Brownfield restoration refers to the repurposing of such sites to protect the surrounding environment, reduce potential blights, and relieve industrial or developmental stressors. Examples of such sites are the construction of new buildings or housing complexes, parks, open spaces, or wildlife areas. Historically, the environmental disaster at Love Canal has been used to exemplify the negative externalities associated with brownfield sites.
Beginning in 1942, Love Canal was the 16-acre landfill for trash in a low to middle class residential neighborhood of upstate New York, near Niagara Falls. Owned by Hooker Chemical, it was evacuated in 1978 due to health threats resulting from poor waste disposal and chemical contamination. Since then, it has been included on the National Priorities List and described as being 20,000 metric tons of chemical waste, affecting environment, homeowners, and schoolchildren. The remedial investigation and feasibility study was conducted here to determine the extent of contamination and assess treatability and cost of the site. The major contamination is due to a chemical known as TCDD. It was ingested by species and spread. Contamination in water sources also affects humans nearby. With all this in mind, the records of decision explain that remediation would include restoration of nearby creeks and species populations, as well as grassland restoration.
Plans for restoration were implemented in 1978 and lasted for 12 years. The end of restoration was marked by increased biodiversity, and forest, wetland, and oak savanna habitats were all restored for native species. Continued assessment for contaminants keeps new homeowners and returns native species safe. 260 homes have been renovated since site restoration. In 2004, Love Canal was removed from the Superfund National Priorities List, meaning that it is no longer one of the top hazardous waste sites in the United States.
Superfund is an environmental program that addresses abandoned hazardous waste sites. This allows the EPA to enforce the cleanup of waste sites by responsible parties. In the event that the responsible party is not present, the EPA can demand funding from said party to support cleanup efforts. A local example of a North Carolina brownfield is located in downtown Durham.
Environmental engineer John Gallagher put us in contact with a local entrepreneur, Todd Atlas, who recently bought a bankrupted dry cleaners business in downtown Durham. Due to groundwater contamination and general site pollution, the building is now a brownfield. Todd's decision to renovate the Scott and Roberts cleaners was partially influenced by profit, but he still had to keep three main objectives in mind in this restoration: the remediation of environmental contamination due to dry cleaning solvents, the refurbishment and preservation of the building's historical character in accordance with the City of Durham's priorities, and the repurposement of the building for a future usage. This restoration to renovation process has been trending recently in downtown Durham, because it is both environmentally beneficial and economically stimulating.
It's just complicated. So there's not only is it complicated technically, the pollution conditions, there's three overlapping state programs that to a certain degree don't particularly work well with one another, you know?
Todd personally faced many challenges from the planning through the actual renovation of the site, chiefly in the management of separate interest groups. DISCA is a group devoted to eliminating dry cleaning byproducts, but only if they present a risk to humans. UST is a similar group focused on petroleum-based chemicals. North Carolina Brownfields is the statewide group for such remedial projects, subsidizing them on a need-based priority.
On all the dollars we spend, 40% of the money comes back in the way of tax credits. So, all in all, a lot of different government participation, but making this an affordable project and a project that would be a really complicated, really great deal, and I think probably would be pretty hard to get off the ground except for all this participation.
Although not the chief scientist in the restoration, Todd surely can say that there was soil cleanup, groundwater testing, air quality assessment, sub-slab air vapor assessment, and a non-permeable membrane to trap contaminants was placed in sight.
There's a lot of projects like this in this area. All around here, this part, all the way to American Tobacco, these are old mills and so.
While investors may still be wary about brownfields, restoration of industrial sites like those in Durham is becoming increasingly popular and important. Therefore, learning about brownfield restoration is essential for understanding urban restoration.